Good day, folks. Welcome to the second part of our series on how to use Ansible as infrastructure as code on AWS. In part one, we stopped at the point where we created EC2 key pair. You remember we created the server underscore key pair, and when you go to AWS console, we also created this public key on AWS console, and I told us that this public key is what we use to provision when we're provisioning our EC2 instances, and the PEM key that we have that we created will be used to authenticate into those EC2 instances. So today what I want to do is to continue with the second part. So specifically today I will show us how to use Ansible to create security groups. And once we create the security group, we then go ahead and provision EC2 instances. And throughout the process, I will explain some concepts that may be new in this video. Okay, to create a security group, let's head over to Ansible documentation and try to find information on how to do exactly that. Remember I showed you guys this documentation in part one, right? Whenever you're dealing with AWS plugin, Amazon.aws plugin, there are a lot of modules, right? So this time around, I want to create a security group. So I will just slowly go down and look for EC2 security group module. It's to maintain an EC2 security group. So this is what I want. So if I click on this, so it will take me to a page where it will tell me, give me further information on what I need to do. So of course, you need to have your collection installed. We know we need Python 3.6 and above, we need Bodo 3, we need Bodo Core, right? Then you can read more on some of those parameters that are required that we need to set. But if you scroll down to the bottom, you actually see a couple of examples that you can just copy and use. Okay, so here are a couple of examples. Here is the module. You need a name for the security group you want to create. You can give a description, which is optional. You can give a VPC ID, which is optional too. If you don't give VPC ID, it will be created in the default VPC. That's what we're going to use. You can specify your profile, but if you configure your AWS authentication, you don't need to do that. The region, you specify your region. The rules mean ingress. So if you scroll up, it will actually tell you rules means ingress. Let me see. So we are coming back to rule egress. Let's see. Let's see. So rules, right? It's list of inbound rules. Inbound rule, that's ingress. And the other one, which is rule egress, is for outbound. It's for egress. Okay. So let's go back to the bottom and see. All right, you define your ingress rules. It's the protocol, the port, the CIDR. Is there anyone? Yeah, this one. This is the one I will copy. This is the one I will use. Right? And you can define your rule egress, which is your outbound rules, which is your egress. Okay, so you can come here and copy whatever you need and modify it according to your needs. So let me head back to my VS Code with what I have and show you how to create security group. Okay, so I will continue from where we stopped. I will add my new task to this one. I've created a task. Let me put it here. Here is my task. Okay, so this is the new task. Create basic security group. Remember, I'm using EC2 security group module, and I've decided to give my security group EC2 SG name, and my description is security group to allow all traffic. I want to allow all traffic. Remember, I told us allowing all traffic is not the best practice, but for the purpose of this video, I will allow all traffic. And I'm using my my AWS region is US East 1. My rules, which are in ingress this time around, I'm defining my ingress. So I'm using port 80 from anywhere, port 8000 from anywhere. So I was thinking of using port 8000 for something. That's why I include port 8000. You can leave it out if you want. Of course, I want to be able to SSH, right? So that's why I'm allowing I'm opening up port 22 from everywhere. Of course, if you work for a company, you in this case on line 39, right? You will specify your company's network range, right? But here I'm just allowing ingress from everywhere. So I'm also opening port 443. I don't even know why I'm doing that, but I'm just opening port 443. And my egress too, I'm opening up egress from all directions. So the next thing I'm doing, of course, we've seen this before in part one, right? Register. I'm using register to actually save the result of these commands. So my security group will be saved in this basic SG variable. So the register is used to save the result of your command in a variable that you can use later. So we will use this later in a minute. So after setting up a security group that allows traffic from everywhere, the next thing I want to do is to set up to actually set up a task that will provision my EC2 instance. So here I've just pasted my code. I just posted my code that will do that. But before I explain this code, let's go back again to the documentation and see how we can do it, how I came about my code before I explain the code. Okay, now we are on Ansible documentation again. If you go back to the Amazon AWS module, again you will just look for a EC2 instance module. You can create and manage EC2 instances. So if you click on that, it will take you to the module page where you can actually find out more information about the module, what are the requirements, what are the parameters you need to set, right? You see the count, saying how many you want to create, right? Availability zone, if you want to create it, if you want to create your EC2 in a specific availability zone, different ways you can authenticate, right? Let's keep going to the bottom. Okay, let me just go to the bottom where you can see some example code that you can modify. Okay, here we are. So if you want to terminate, this is how you terminate, this is how you restart, this is how you create one, right, with public IP, which is the one we want to create, right? So you can copy this and modify this, but let's head towards my VS Code and I will explain what I've got here. So here I'm using EC2 instance module. This is the name I've given my task, right? The instance I'm using is T2 micro, and of course the region I'm creating my EC2 instance is US East. The image ID, okay, we can head to AWS console and I will show you how I got my EMI Amazon machine image. I'll show you how I got that. So this key name is the name of the key that we created in part one. Remember, we call the key Quity Ansible key. So we copied that. That's the name of the key. So we replace this with that. That's the key. This case, I want to create 2 EC2 instances. Let's even change that to 3. And the security group, the name of the security group that we just created. So this one, the name of this is EC2 security group name. We just copy that. We replace it with this. And of course, we've seen this multiple times, register. So I'm registering all the EC2 instances in this variable called EC2 because I will need the result sometimes later. So I'm putting the result in EC2 variable. So let's head to AWS console and I will show you how I got my AMI, Amazon Machine image. So here is my Amazon management console. I will navigate to my EC2 instance page and I will click on launch instance. So once I click on launch instance, so depending on which Linux distro that I want to use, so let's assume I want to create Ubuntu, so I click on Ubuntu. Right away you can see the AMI here, so you can copy this. So once you copy that, go to the bottom, just cancel that. That's it. That's how I got it. So whatever you copy from my AWS management console, you paste it here. That's it. So you save it. So this will create the EC2 instances for you. We provision 3 EC2 instances for us. Let me change this to 3. However, there's a couple of things we need to do. Right? There's some couple of. Actually, I changed my mind. Let's run this code. Let's go ahead and run this code. Well, let's give it a name first. Let me give it a name. Let's call it public instance. So let's give it a name. Of course, we know the drill. We're going to run Ansible playbook EC2 playbook.yaml. Okay, before I run my Ansible playbook command, what I want to emphasize here is I've given my instance, my EC2 instance, public instance name. So I will run this command and I will come back and explain what is going on here. So while that is running, let's go to AWS console. You actually see right now I only have one instance, right? I only have my control node. So let's just wait and see if let's wait for 1 second. Okay, now after a couple of seconds, you can actually see 3 new instances, right? Public instance, public instance, public instance. But the challenge for me is all the 3 EC2 instances, they actually have the same name. So I don't want that. I want to be able to personalize the name of each of the EC2 instance. So I will head over to my VS Code and make a little bit of adjustment, and we come back and see what happened. So this is what I want to do. I want to take advantage of a different Amazon module to create tag dynamically for the EC2 instances. So if we head over to our documentation again, Ansible documentation again, if we go back to the plugin page, you can actually see EC2 tag. Where are you? EC2 tag. If you click on EC2 tag, you can use this to create and remove tag on EC2 resources. That's what I want to do. You can read this page, but I want to go to the bottom where there are a couple of examples that you can use. All right, the examples are here. You can come back here to read and select whatever example works best for your use case. So in my own case, let me head over to my VS Code. Okay, so what I want to do, let me put my code here. Couple of things I want to do. Let me adjust my code properly. So this is my EC2 instance, but because it takes some time for the EC2 instance to come online, I'm using this module wait for to check if port 22 is accessible on each of the instances before I move on to the next task. So this task this task is just checking if my instances are ready to receive traffic, right? So in a way, it's actually checking port 22 to check if port 22 is accessible, right? Remember, I saved the EC2 instances inside this variable EC2, right? So I'm using the loop to collect those items, right? So in this case, there will be 3 items, there will be 3 instances, right? So that's why I'm saying EC2 dot instances, right? Now I'm using item, right? Remember, loop is more or less like for loop in other programming language. I'm saying for each item in this loop, for this instance in this loop, I want you to check port 22 if it's ready to accept, if it has started, if it's ready to accept signal. And I want you to check item public IP address. So check public IP address on port 22 for each instance to be sure that it's ready to accept signal traffic. Okay, so once it's ready to accept traffic, then we can go ahead and use EC2 tag to create tag. So again, region, this is clear. So here I'm using loop again, right? I'm collecting each instance. So for each item in this loop, I want to get the instance ID, right? And I want to be sure that it's present. If it's present, I want to tag it with public. So let me remove the tag we have here. Anyway, let me remove the name we have here first. Now I want to supply the name as public instance, not server, public instance, right? And I'm introducing a new concept here, which is called loop control. I want to use the loop. Loop control is used to keep track of how many times you've gone through a loop, right? So this loop, because we have 3 instances, right? The loop we go through will be run 3 times, right? So the loop control we keep track of the number 1, 2, 3. So the index var we keep track of how many times, right, that we've gone through this loop, and we can then take advantage of that to dynamically change the name of our instances. So here we have public, the first time we have public instance 0, public instance 1, public instance 2. That's how the loop will work. So let's save this, right? And let's run our Ansible playbook command and see what we've got. Well, I just want to review my code one more time before I run my Ansible playbook command, which I've typed here. Okay, this is good, this is good, this is good, this is good. I believe this is good. Again, if you go to AWS console, I removed the ones we created before, so there's just one. There's just my Ansible control node here. Okay, so let me go back and run my playbook. Here is my playbook. I will run my playbook. It can take some minutes. I will come back once this is done. Okay, the playbook ran without problem. That's good. Let's head over to our AWS console and see what we've done. So AWS console. Let's refresh this. Here you go. You can now see, unlike before where we have public instance, we've actually dynamically changed the name of our EC2, each of the EC2 instance, right? each of the EC2, so we have public instance 0, public instance 1, and public instance 2. So I mean, just to recap what we did in this video, right? We started by creating a basic security group, right? Then we provision EC2 instance. Because we understood that the EC2 instance will not come online immediately, right? We take advantage of wait for module, right, to check when our instances are ready. Right? Once our instances are ready, we then use another module, EC2 tag, to create a tag dynamically, right? And there is this on line 77 and 78. I introduced the loop control as a way for us to keep track of how many times we've gone through a loop, right? And we can use that variable to actually dynamically change the name of our EC2 instance, right? So with this, I've been able to take you through a basic process of setting up of provisioning EC2 instances using Ansible. So this marks the end of the video, but there are some enhancements that you can do to this, right? There's some ways you can actually parameterize some of the variables in this playbook in a way that makes sense. Maybe I will make a short video on that so that we can make our playbook a little bit more dynamic and secure with the help of Ansible Vault. So if you have any question, don't hesitate to drop it for me. And stay tuned for the next video.